This video is sponsored by War Thunder. If you have to choose between Ana's Biotic Bounce and Headhunter perk, in most cases you'll be going for the second one, as it enables you to do things like this. While the Biotic Bounce, wow, it just bounces. And there are other perks in Overwatch that don't change anything in a meaningful way and can also be considered to be quite boring. Like, what in the world does this thing even do? So I'm going to take what I believe to be the worst support perks and try changing them to be something more fun and interesting. So we can do something that will go from looking like this to this. First, let's take a look at Ana's perks. To some of you, this might be a pretty balanced set of perks, with some of them increasing Ana's damage output and others focusing more on the utility side of her kit. However, out of all these perks, Groggy feels like the least impactful to me. The usefulness of this perk usually comes down to whether or not there are specific heroes on the enemy team. Mostly one hero, Wrecking Ball. But even having a hero on the enemy team that this perk is useful against doesn't always mean that it will directly counter that hero. Especially if they themselves have a perk that has a counter to your counter. One of the most rewarding feelings of playing Ana is sleeping an ulting enemy hero. Doing so can in some situations win you crucial teamfights and sometimes even matches as well. So the way I see how some of the perks should work is that some of them should reward skillful plays. So to make sleep dart hits more rewarding, I thought about a perk that significantly reduces your sleep dart's cooldown and prolongs sleep duration if you hit an ulting target. And we can also keep all the current properties of the Groggy perk. When I first saw this Baptiste perk for the first time when it was introduced in Season 1, I was like, what? And when I checked the Overwatch perks website to see which Baptiste perk people prefer, I was like, what? Okay, seriously, there is objectively no reason to pick an increased immortality field radius over faster attack speed. Sure, the expanded radius can potentially save more teammates or save them if you threw your lamp a bit too far to where you wanted it to be at. So at best I can see this perk as a quality of life change than the actual upgrade to the ability. And as we know, immortality field is mostly used for defensive purposes, to keep yourself and your team alive. But what if there was an option to convert this frisbee ball into an offensive ability as well? Now, let's get rid of this perk and introduce this one. Now you get an option to select between offensive or defensive immortality field. The defensive one stays pretty much the same as it is right now, but the offensive field will now debuff the enemies inside of the field by reducing their movement speed and making them receive 25% more damage from all sources, essentially combining Ramacha's Vortex with Zenyatta's Discord. This will enable more playmaking opportunities for Baptiste and his team and add more depth to his kit. Out of all 4 perks that Brigitte has, the Morale Boost perk is the least inspiring. Get it? Inspiring. Ow! The only upside of this perk is that if you are playing against long range or hypermobile team composition, then this perk can indeed come in handy, as you'll be relying slightly more on your whip shots than your actual primary attack to keep your healing going. So even though there can be situations where this perk is viable, I still think that this is the weakest of them all. As of right now, Brigitte does not have any abilities bound to her reload, and she obviously doesn't have to reload anything. This could be a good opportunity to introduce something new to her kit, and I have quite an interesting idea. Introducing Empowered Shield. Totally not stalling from Doomfist. What it does is that if you are holding your shield, you can press reload key to activate Empowered Shield state that lasts 2 seconds and changes how the shield looks like. During which, if your shield takes a certain amount of damage, one of the next abilities that you use becomes empowered, also indicated by this UI element. An empowered whip shot will deal extra damage and do a short stun. The repair pack will heal one of your teammates more and overheal them with armor, just like the good old days. And the shield bash will take you further and also deal more damage. Wait, what kind of a perk is this? Summon a jet fighter on the field for 15 seconds. Oh, wow. This actually looks kinda sick. I wonder if there is a game where I can play as a jet fighter. Oh, I know! War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it is free on PC, Xbox, PlayStation and mobile. Whether you're into tanks, planes or warships, this game has it all. With epic battles across the globe and over 2500 unique vehicles, there's always something new to try. Each one looks, feels and plays differently. And if you're a fan of customization like me, War Thunder lets you personalize your vehicles too. They actively update the game, and with a recent heavy cavalry update, battles look and sound even more epic. It also added new vehicles like the top tier fighters F-14D Super Tomcat and M346. So if that sounds cool, download War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox and mobile by using the links in the description and pinned comment. All new players and those returning after 6+ months will receive a massive bonus pack for PC and consoles, including 100,000 Silver Lions, a special Eagle of Valor decorator and more, available for limited time only. Now let's go back to the video. Imagine you have a choice between being an NPC in an open world game or the main character of your favorite game. And that is exactly what is happening between these two Illari perks. I cannot believe that the Rapid Construction perk has survived such a long time being in the game. You essentially can make an already powerful ultimate even more powerful by having faster flight, faster attack speed, and stay in the air for additional 3 seconds. Or alternatively, make your healing pylon build slightly faster. Wow, what a choice. The only probable scenario where Rapid Construction perk might come in handy is where you are literally about to die from fire damage and need to have your pylon up as soon as possible. Even though it might not happen as often as you think. But apart from that, there's no real reason to pick this perk over the summer solstice. So, the way I and a good chunk of other people view Illari is that she is essentially a DPS hero hiding behind a support icon. And a lot of Illari players tend to just go on a flank and start dealing damage and creating space for their team, while leaving their team with one less support to heal them. I would personally play into this sort of way of playing Illari, but also giving her something that won't make her a 100% DPS hero. So as a replacement for the Rapid Construction perk, what if we gave her something that grants her a second healing pylon that does less healing when 2 of them are active at the same time? This, in my opinion, will allow Illari to go on risky flanks but also leave something for her team so that they don't die so easily. Or more likely what will happen is that the greedy Illari players will just use the second pylon for themselves as well. I'll be honest with you, I personally don't see that many Jetpack Cats players picking the headbutt perk. The last time I've seen it being picked is probably during the first week of Season 1, where players were experimenting with the perk. And don't get me wrong, it can be a quite fun perk to pick, especially if you want to boot players off the map. But in most cases, players still pick Close Alt perk due to the high damage that you can deal with it, especially if you hit multiple enemies at once. Yes, you can do that. And yes, you can also do a combo of a headbutt plus quick melee, which will result in a higher DPS than with the Close Alt. However, what's also important to note is that by booping your target away from yourself, you'll have to use extra fuel to close the distance with them, which can result in your own death, as you can run out of fuel for an escape route, and obviously there can be a situation where you'll end up helping the enemy player by accidentally booping them close to a health pack, or a corner to hide behind. However, I do think that this particular perk can still be viable if it was changed just a little bit, and that is by allowing the damage to scale with the flight duration. Normally, you have to be around 10 meters away from your target in order to deal the headbutt damage. But let's say we use almost the entire fuel tank to deal damage with the headbutt perk. In that case, we can increase the damage to be somewhere at around 100. And to be sure that we don't die after colliding with an enemy, we can also make it so that it restores 25% of fuel on impact. This, in my opinion, will make this perk more on par with the other perk. For the next one, I wanted to ask somebody who specializes at playing Juno at the highest level, and somebody who doesn't nuke Juno 50 times per video. I decided to ask Aspen what she thinks will be the best new perk for Juno, and what she suggested does sound quite interesting. The new Pulsar Torpedoes perk that replaces Faster Blaster. Now, the timer that you see when using your torpedoes not only acts as how much time you have left until the ability expires or auto-shoots, but also as a charge mechanic. So the longer you hold these torpedoes, regardless whether you are locked onto a target or not, the more damage and healing they will do, with a maximum of 120 damage and healing on impact. I even made a fancy UI for the damage scaling up. This essentially creates an opportunity where Juno can now hide behind a corner, use torpedoes and wait until the timer reaches 2 or 3 seconds and then peek around the corner to deal massive amount of damage and healing. Essentially making it a high risk, high reward type of a perk, with the risk of Juno being essentially out of combat for 5 seconds where you are not contributing to the team. Aspen also suggested giving Juno up to 3 glide boost charges for every final blow that you do during usage of glide boost. Really, Aspen? Do you really want to make Juno another mosquito hero in the game? Anyway, thank you Aspen for contributing your idea to the video. Make sure you all show her some love. And now let's move on to the best hero in Overwatch universe that you all... Alright, as I promised you all, there's going to be at least one silly perk idea in this video. And I want to talk about Kiriko and one of her perks. Wait, you never said anything about promising a silly perk in this video. Shh, I'm just trying to be entertaining and I'm certainly not running out of ideas of what perks should be changed. Otherwise, I'd be asking ChatGPT for help with these videos and that is not something I am ever going to do. Anyway, I really wanted to make this perk for Kiriko called Emergency Exit and replace the current Ready Step perk. The idea behind this perk is to allow Kiriko to be more of a ninja hero, and that is by allowing her to teleport not only to her teammates, but also to health packs. By equipping this perk, you immediately can see all the health packs through the walls that are within your teleport radius. And assuming that those health packs are present and are not hacked by the enemy Sombra, you can teleport to them and use it to either go behind the enemy lines and be a stealthy ninja and get a potential pick for your team, or use it as an emergency exit in a situation where your teammates are not in your vicinity but the health pack is. Wow, what an insane idea you got there, man. Hope they add it to the game one day, can't wait for it. Thanks, bro! Hey, are you being sarcastic? Can we skip to the next hero by any chance? Lifeweaver's pedal platform, as most of us know, is used primarily for vertical mobility that is usually not available to certain heroes. This ability was also made in mind that players would stay on it for prolonged time to use as a high ground advantage. However, the ability for the most part remained as a glorified elevator for most players. This is where the pedal protection perk was supposed to make the pedal platform more viable and promote staying on it for longer, but that did not change anything for the most part. So instead, we can try something a bit more creative that does not involve this ability whatsoever. What if instead we had a perk that incentivized Lifeweaver to deal more damage? And yes, there's already a perk that promotes a more aggressive playstyle, so in this case we're going to switch places with these two perks, so you get a choice between two damage oriented perks. This new perk essentially gives you a synergy between doing damage and healing. So, whenever you're not actively healing your teammates, your healing slowly charges by itself, but with this perk, the percentage of the damage that you deal is transferred to your healing blossom charge. It creates a playstyle that is similar to Moira's, just less boring and more skilled as you actually have to aim. And with this perk, you can justify going for more damage without making your team angry at you. Lucio. That's it. What? Okay, I always have to say this whenever it comes to Lucio. He is my least played support hero, so that means I have no idea which one of his perks is even bad. So I took advantage of my creative skills as well as my big brain to come up with a perk that most Lucio players would like and appreciate. In other words, I asked Frogger, who came up with 4 interesting ideas. The first one involves Lucio's Soundwave, in which case Frogger suggested that it will give more identity to his boop if it did extra damage and slow for a second, if the booped hero collides with a wall. So basically Brigitte's Whiplash perk. Another change that is a change for Accelerando is to make his primary a machine gun. Make his bullets bounce 3 times off walls. Okay, so unfortunately that is not possible to do in a custom game, so I will have to do something a bit more creative with this to showcase the change. And finally, damage and healing increases based off move speed, which allows for stylish rollout to reward kills. What? Thank you Frogger for your contribution to this video. Make sure you guys go and show him some love and support, as you should do to all small content creators. This Mercy perk increases the Guardian Angel ability range by 30%, which is a pretty decent perk in my opinion. It allows you to escape from teamfights all the way to your camping Widow who is in your backline, or keep up with your Jetpack Cat who is carrying a weapon of mass destruction. But even though it has a lot of great uses, I still find it to be a bit too plain and basic. You see, movement is one of the things that separates a good Mercy with a bad one. So I came up with a more fun movement perk that essentially allows you to switch to a different flight target in the middle of your current flight without your ability going on a cooldown. But only once, meaning that you can do a full triangle movement going from point A to B to C and back to A. This allows Mercy to be more maneuverable and unpredictable, thus harder to hit if you're on the enemy team. Maybe not so fun after all, at least for them. Mizuki in some cases can be compared to Brigitte, both are close to mid-range heroes who also heal in a radius. We can even compare 2 of their perks, Morale Boost and Wellspring. Both in a nutshell provide more healing when hitting enemy heroes. And since we already covered a similar perk with Brigitte, we'll now focus on Mizuki's. In some cases it can be quite difficult to consistently hit your primary fire shots, and when you do hit them, you obviously output more damage and healing at the same time. So I thought that it would be nice to replace this perk with the one that rewards hitting your primary shots. Or in other words, upon hitting consecutive shots without missing, your primary will do 5% more damage and therefore generate more healing as well. You know, this might be a hot take, as somebody who doesn't even play Moira that much. I kinda like the idea behind the reversal perk. Yes, all that it does is just make the orb go back in the same direction it came from. Instead of having the mechanic that reverses its direction, what if instead you could switch between healing and damage orb while it is still in the middle of the flight? Think of it this way, you send an orb to your teammate to heal them. As soon as it passes through them and heals them, it is just going to fly around the map until the duration of it ends, rendering it useless. But what if instead, after the orb is done healing your teammate, you switch it to the damage orb and it ends up actually killing someone? Now that will be a pretty fun perk if you ask me. Water. In real life, we use water for many things. Staying hydrated, make tea, and also clean ourselves. And this is where I think that Wuyang's Guardian Wave perk could be a bit more real-life lore accurate in my opinion. When you're anti-heal by Anasnate, you're covered in some weird substance that denies any healing. Or if you are burning from Ash's dynamite, you are as well covered in flames. So having a perk that upgrades your Guardian Wave, you should be able to remove all of those effects with water. I would even go as far as making it remove all negative effects, including sleep effect, because you know, you can wake people up with water as well, you know. But something tells me that some people will not like having another Suzu in the game, so maybe have it work against certain status effects only. And for the last hero, Zendaya, let's do something fun and just change every single perk that he has. Discordant Repair. Now instead of lifesteal being exclusive to just Zenyatta, it will now also apply to everybody on your team. Ascendance. Instead of holding down the jump button and floating, you can also hold down your crouch to charge it and go upwards. Basically a budget version of Baptiste Exo Boots. Focus Destruction. Fully charged shots now pierce through enemies. And for the last perk, Dual Harmony. If you place both of these orbs on Shimada Brothers, Zenyatta gains an ability to wall climb. Crazy. Let me know what you think about these ideas, if I cooked or if I overcooked, and if I belong in the Overwatch balancing team. Thank you all for watching, and a huge thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you click the links down in the description to grab a free bonus for PC and consoles if you're a new player or haven't played in 6 months. And as always, I shall see you all in the next one.